from the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to OpenLine. I'm Carrie Sharp. Thank you, as always, for being with us tonight. Tonight's topic is LGBTQ discrimination in schools and also resources to combat it. We're also going to be talking a lot about what some groups have called the slate of hate that many bills just passed in our legislature this last legislative session. We welcome your calls surrounding this. If you have questions or comments, it is OpenLine. It is your floor as well. So 615-737+ is the number to call. We'll get those calls lined up. But first, I'd love to introduce you to our guest tonight. Jace Wilder is joining us. Jace, thank you for being with us. You are a project manager with the Tennessee Equality Project. We appreciate you being here. First of all, tell us about the Tennessee Equality Project. What would you like our viewers to know about it?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me, and I'm super excited about tonight's conversation. Tennessee Equality Project is a grassroots advocacy group here in Tennessee that works to, basically, as it says, work for equality for all Tennesseans. We primarily focus on LGBTQ+ issues, and in my role, I specifically focus on our Trans 101 programming to educate Tennesseans from businesses and organizations about what it means to be trans, terminology, and all the things surrounding LGBT so that we can have more inclusive and diverse conversations.
And believe it or not, you're still a student at Belmont while you're doing all of this. Tell us on the personal side more about what you do on the student side.
Yeah, so I'm proud to say that I'm a Belmont Bruin and I'm graduating this next semester. I am studying political science and public health. Chose that before the pandemic, but worked out fantastic.
Yeah, it sure did. You've got a good role ahead of you there. A lot of little different avenues will combine. Something that the Tennessee Equality Project does a lot of is advocating up on Capitol Hill here in Tennessee. And this past legislative session, what many groups, including the Tennessee Equality Project, deemed was a slate of hate, and much of those bills passed and became law. And we want to focus tonight on those that concern students in our schools across the state. I'm going to let you pick it up and maybe rattle off some of the laws that are most concerning to you in the Tennessee Equality Project.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there were 5 laws that passed in this last session that focus solely on discriminating against LGBTQ individuals, with the majority of them targeting trans students in particular. One of the laws that was passed was House Bill 3, which targeted trans athletes. The purpose of the bill was to basically say that if you identified with a gender that was other than what was on your birth certificate, then you cannot play on the team that aligns with how you present, how you actually are. Instead, you have to go based off of what is on that birth certificate, which causes a lot of different issues. Other in-school discrimination included a new mandate that would require that there is a 30-day notice before there is material released in a classroom that may include LGBTQ content. So that means that if we're discussing Alan Turing and I, as a teacher, decide that it's an important point to point out that not only did he break the Enigma code in World War II, but he suffered great discrimination for being gay, I could only mention that first part. That second part, I would have to send a letter home, getting a signature from a parent to say that it's okay that I mention that important part of history. One of the other bills that we saw that affects students in schools specifically was what's been nicknamed the reverse bathroom bill. Over the past few years, we have seen that there are multiple bathroom bills passed within states, and these all focused on trying to say that trans students or students who didn't look exactly like the gender they were assigned at birth could not use the restroom that made them most comfortable. So the issue with this particularly is that not only does it target trans students, but for those that just may present more masculinely but are female identifying, they may still be subject to discrimination and told that they can't be in a restroom, that they made someone uncomfortable, which causes its own issues. But specifically with this bill, what it does is that if someone reports that they feel uncomfortable with a trans student in the bathroom, it would be excused as accommodation to have them removed or to allow that other student to have any other form of accommodation they see fit, which again, targets and really isolates our trans students. And two other bills that do affect, I believe, even if it's indirectly, our trans students also includes an HRT bill, which is hormone replacement therapy. What this does is block trans individuals from being able to get the medical access they need in order to medically transition. So this can mean for a trans child with their parent and their doctor, they couldn't make the decision altogether to allow that person to start hormones. In this past session, what it focused on was stopping it before the first stage of puberty, which wasn't in practice. But the concern is that this is going to progress, as there is still a bill by, I believe, Senator Bowling and Representative Reagan that is sitting on a calendar for next year that could expand on this and make it more strict and potentially cause a total loss of access for our students. And that's the basic slate that is passed on. But we are still expecting more that could be coming around, and it's really causing a dangerous environment for our LGBT students.
You touched on something with the hormone replacement theory that really, I think, brings up a broader issue. You said they're trying to do something that isn't even allowed at this time, trying to backtrack it, and it's not even an issue. Are these laws targeting true issues in our schools?
Absolutely not. These are what we would probably consider pseudo issues, because a lot of these are based off of kind of phenomenons of almost rumor in a way, where one person says something without any kind of factual backing, and what we see is this ripple effect where we do see fear. And it's reasonable in the fact that when you hear it enough and when you are told enough that something is wrong, then we start to believe it, even if we don't know where that origin came from. And so when we see the state legislator, a body that we are supposed to trust as people, saying that trans students or having trans athletes or having access to HRT is dangerous, we should be able to trust our representatives when they say stuff like that. But unfortunately, it's not true, and there's no scientific backing, and it's pointing towards issues that don't exist, and it feels more like avoiding other issues.
Why do you think it's so talked about then? Why are lawmakers pushing this stuff so hard? Because it's not just happening in Tennessee. Several states are doing this.
Right. I think that there's a lot of ideas and theories that kind of go around this, but the one that seems the most prevalent is honestly a form of scapegoating when it comes to politics. We see that, especially with there being very intense conversation, sometimes it's easier to scapegoat a certain group instead of addressing full and very deep issues. It allows for pretty easy political points whenever we do that. And again, since we do want to trust our representatives and our senators, we go based off of the information that they provide for us. And if they say that we're doing this for your safety and it's a quick fix if we just do it like this, then it seems like the right solution. But when we dig deeper, we see that this is obviously not the problem that we need to be focusing on. There's other issues that are still not resolved, and that there is no issue that is resolved by doing this. There's only creation of more issues.
Gotcha. Let's go to the phone lines. This is OpenLine. We have Tyler on the line. Tyler, thank you for breaking the ice and getting us started. Go ahead.
Hi there. Good evening. I just wanted to ask whether you thought, when dealing with discrimination in the state of Tennessee for LGBTQ individuals, do you think that the best way forward is dealing with it at the state level through the state legislature, or do you think that not much is going to get done there and we need some kind of federal policy change?
Great question. Thank you, Tyler, for calling in. I'm going to hang up. You can listen to the answer on your TV. Jace, go ahead. What do you think?
So thank you for that question. I think that I would hope that we could resolve these kind of issues on a state level, because personally, I am a believer that we should always want to start on the state level. We should always want to trust our state representatives. They're the people that are most close to us. But unfortunately, when the state isn't listening and there's a group of individuals that are being targeted by their own legislator, we may have to identify with more federal more federal laws instead. So, for example, there's been a proposal of what's called the Equality Act, which would create protections for LGBTQ individuals from discrimination, along with conversations in the courts about Title IX and Title VII and how they could protect transgender workers, transgender students in those areas. So we do see that there is more federal action when it comes to this, but we would really want to have this resolved and understood on a state level instead.
And it's really interesting because right now these laws have been passed, and this is happening not just in Tennessee, but in other places as well. They're passed on the state level, but there are federal protections, and then we have lawsuits stemming from the state or from families in the state, and it really just becomes this state of confusion of what is the law of the land, who supersedes who, and what do we need to abide by. It just becomes a confusing mess.
Right, and I totally agree. It definitely, and I think that's actually been one of the big issues is that throughout this entire conversation over the past few years within state legislators, states have been told that, all these laws do go against federal law and that these laws are going to be brought to court. And as we've seen previously, very recently, there have been lawsuits brought against Tennessee regarding this, with one of the trans athletes here in Tennessee actually showing that he is being discriminated against and brought suit. Now, it's going to take a long time for us to get an answer from that court and to see what the results are. But despite these warnings about how we're going to be wasting Tennessee tax dollars, taxpayer money on these laws that cannot stand against these federal decisions, we are just seeing that it's not reasonable and it's not a good use of our time or of our taxpayer dollars.
All right, we're off to a good start here, and we have Dee and Julia on the line. Please stay where you are. We're going to sneak in a quick commercial break, and we'll take those calls right when we get back. Stay with us.